Shalom, everybody. We're in Parashat Bereshit, the first parashah of the Bible, Genesis 1. If you need to raise your hand or draw on the screen, here's how you do it. And invite anyone to check out my website and the course offerings there. Who would like to read the first verse of the Bible?
Jesse would.
Jesse would.
Yeah.
You've been volunteered.
I've been volunteered. Okay. Bereshit bara Elohim et ha-shamayim ve'et haaretz.
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Okay, what is the root of Bereshit, the first word of the Bible?
Rosh.
Rosh. Rosh is a head, top, chief, first. Bereshit. So we see that it's a feminine noun, which is usually more abstract, but the point is that it's a beginning. A beginning or the beginning? Well, the beginning, obviously, since it's written right there in the translation. The way that we understand how construct chains work, or rather, I should say two different things. The way we understand that a definite article works, this should be in a beginning. And there are lots of interpreters that will jump on that and derive from that multiple creations and multiple destructions and God of the gap. No, that's a different one. Gap theory. It's basically the easiest way to make a sound theology mesh up with a pseudoscience whose God is billions of years. There is an option, though, to read this in a different way. And there are other places in the Bible where we have the example of a verb showing up in a construct chain, not because the verb itself can appear in construct, but rather that the idea of Elohim bara can be thought of as a noun. Okay, bit of a stretch. Well, maybe not, because how does the Septuagint translate it? In the beginning. So clearly there was precedent for the Greek to translate it that way. So what's happening here is probably Reshit, the beginning of, either bara Elohim, the creating of God, that is God doing the action of creating, or if you want to modify the vowels, you could turn this into an infinitive and it would become bero Elohim. I mean, it is an option. Remember that the vowel pointings were added thousands of years later. So let's keep an open mind here. Why did the Septuagint think the word the was necessary? Because it was understood as such. Alternatively, we could always modify this to ba reshit, in the beginning. But if we go with the first option, look how it changes the way the first verse reads. In the beginning of the creating act of God, creating the heavens and the earth, comma, breath, it goes into the how do I say this? It goes on into more background information, I guess I can put it that way, in verse 2, which we'll read here in just a second. And then boom, verse 3 would be the like premier initial action that is bursting forth onto the scene. God spoke, let there be light, and there was light. It's an interesting interpretation. So background information, boom, here it is. Who would like to read verse 2? Go ahead, Cheryl, turn your mic on. Yep.
Okay. והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו וחושך על פני תהום, ורוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני המים.
Excellent. והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו וחושך על פני תהום, ורוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני המים. All right, so what do we want to go with this? What do we want to do with this? All right, let's start easy. Why is it Aretz instead of Eretz? That's easy, right?
Because of the definite article, because of the hey.
That's a fair enough reason. Yeah, Aretz is or Eretz is a relatively unique word. It's probably because of the guttural at the front, but when it's in construct by itself, it's Eretz. But when it's got a definite article or when it's in pausal form, it's Aretz. And that is closer to the original form of the word, Alts. So that's kind of cool that this vowel is preserved for us. But yeah, as you said, every time there's a definite article, it prefers aretz instead of eretz. Well, maybe it has to do with guttural following guttural following guttural. Who knows? Eretz, is it masculine or feminine?
Feminine.
Yeah, we can tell because the following verb is feminine. There's a kamatz hey at the end, right? So the root must be hey, yod, tav. What? No, that's not right. What's happening here? How do I know that's a feminine? And what's that tav doing there? Or alternatively, what is the root of this verb, if not what I just erroneously presented? It's from the verb haya. So we know hey is the first root letter, yod the second, but it's a lamed yod verb. It's got a missing yod, a missing third root letter. Tav is the original feminine tav, which showed up on all of our 3FS verbs originally and still shows up in plenty of other Semitic languages. Let me give you an example. If she guarded, how would you say that? She guarded.
Ishamra.
Shamra. Yeah, like this. Shamra. So what happened is originally it would have been shamra, feminine tav. Shamra. But the t is too hard for us to pronounce, so it was left off, and we're left with shamra. Well, that's kind of funny because now this pattern of is put onto a root that has a missing root, onto a verb that has a missing root letter. It should have been something more like hayat, right? Ha, ya, ta, or something like that. Let's see. No, it would have a T at the end. Hayata, hayata. Anyway, the point is that when the yod here went missing, we now have one too few root letters. So look, this is 3FS. Let's stick it onto there. 3FS, hayata. Are you serious? Yes, there is a quasi-double feminine marker in lamed yod verbs. The tav is original, the kamatse is added later because that's what all the other 3FS verbs do. Tohu vavohu. That's a fitting
Can you just
description.
repeat what the root really is for that then? For
Okay. If we want to look it up in the dictionary, we look under hey, yod, hey. And because it's a lamed yod verb, it's probably closer to hey, yod, yod. And if we find a few places in the Bible that preserve an even older tradition, it's probably hey, vav, yod. So
I
it's
wondered
a
about the
tradition.
vav. I wondered
Sure.
about that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm aware of at least 5 places in the Bible where instead of a yod showing up in the second root letter, a vav does. And this is going to be akin to all of the examples where we see yods and vavs flipping back and forth. Like hollow roots, we get to see lun and sum turning into lin and seam. Loon or loon, which turns into lean, has to do with lodging somewhere. And sum, which turns into seam, is putting or placing. Furthermore, verbs that were originally pay vav, like yashav, had an original vav here. How do we know? Because the vav shows up in other forms where there's something else at the beginning of the word, where the first root letter is no longer the beginning of the word. So whereas we see yashav like this, you put it into the nifal, all of a sudden it's no shav. Wait, where'd this vav come from? It's original. There's also another example talking about Sarah, the wife of Abraham, about how she was barren and there was not to her valad. What? What the heck is a valad? Well, it's a yeled, but it has the original vav here. So I mean, there are numerous examples to evidence that vavs in Hebrew often turn to yods, and this one is no exception. Oh, what about ha? Okay, this is similar. What about chai or chaya, the root of which is chet yod yod, but we see Eve's name as Chava. Where'd the vav come from? It's original. So there are plenty of parallels. Is that touching on answering your question? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And maybe the most famous example in the Bible of Hey Yod Hey actually being Hey Vav Yod is God's name. And we have a Yiktol Yod and then Hey Vav, and then of course it's Lamed Yod. So instead of the final Yod, it's a Hey. But what's this Vav doing here? It's original. So in God's name, that's the first root letter, second root letter, and then the Lamed Yod is missing. The third root letter Yod is missing. Let's see. Tohu vavohu is a little bit of a fitting expression, given all of the complexities we've been wrestling with so far. It's a common expression in modern Hebrew still, and it comes from here. Tohu vavohu is like, it says here without form and void, or maybe chaotic or disorder or emptiness or something like that. I think it's only used in the Bible maybe twice, once here and once in Jeremiah. And what is its? Would anyone like to venture a guess as to what its root may be for each of these two words? It's super easy. It's right there. Tav, hey, vav, bet, hey, vav. Now, where do we get to see this stressed O sound in nouns? Like this one over here. In segolets. This is actually an O-flavored segolet, if you will, much like Kodesh, Chodesh, Ohel, all of those words. It's just that final vav at the end affected the what should have been a segol, right? Instead of toheu, it becomes tohu. It's easier to say. Or actually, that's not true. It would have originally been tohu, tohu. Wow. So that turns into tohu, obviously. Okay. So choshech is also a segolet. Al penei tahom. Veruach Elohim merachefet. Okay, ruach, masculine or feminine?
Chapter 2.
Feminine.
Most of the time in the Bible, it shows up as feminine. There are a couple places that are irregular where somebody didn't know their grammar, I guess, so they put a masculine something attached to it. But we can see here in this context, merachefet betrays the true gender of ruach. And what kind of a word is this? Not necessarily what does it mean. It might mean something like fluttered or, I always get this picture of like a mother bird fluttering over her young, mirachefet. But here the ruach is doing it. What kind of a word is this? Mirachefet.
BL verb.
What form is it?
Yeah. Mm,
We have a mem preformative. So what PL has a mem preformative? A participle. Like midaber, right? Midaber, speaking. And it also has the feminine et ending. So mirachefet, she is fluttering, hovering, moving. Al pnei hamayim. And there we have that pausal form and with a kamatz instead of patach. All right, comments or questions? All right, little itty bitty verse, but this is like the biggest initial statement of Genesis chapter 1. Who would like to read? All right, I will. Vayomer Elohim yehi or vayhi or. And from the root amar, said, it's a vayiktol, so that means it's narrative past tense. Yod tells us he is the subject. And then he said, who did? Elohim. So verb first, subject second. That's usual syntax in Hebrew. All right, what did he say? Well, here it is. That little comma-looking thing right there, the tipacha, tells us to pause just a hair. That's because it's the beginning of the quote. Yehi or. And I just imagine like this Charlton Heston like narrator's voice in the background, it's trying to sound like God. Yehi or. Be light. Or let there be light. What form of a word is this? We actually mentioned it, what, last time we met, maybe?
See,
Say again, Paulina?
is that jussive?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the jussive looks like a yiktol, except it will be necessarily be missing any mater lectionis letters like hey, yod, and vav. And occasionally it'll even get a couple other vowel changes or a move in the stress. Here, what should be yihye, he will be, we lose that hey at the end. That's only a vowel, and we get yehi. So this is jussive in form and in meaning. What do I mean by form? Well, not all verbs look particularly special or different in the jussive. Okay, wait a second. What is jussive? What does that even mean? Sounds like a fancy linguistic term. It's okay. All right. How about it's kind of like a command form spoken in the third person.
Mhm.
Okay. If I'm a servant and I'm speaking to the king, I'm not going to tell the king, hey, king, what you need to do is blah, blah, blah. No, you said, let the king do such and such, if it please the king, So let the king do, or something like that. That is jussive. It's like a third person imperative, if you will. So a jussive belongs to a larger category of verbs called volatives, not because they're volatile, but because it shows volition. Volition, what someone wants to do. There's a first person volative that says, oh, I wish to do something. What's that called? What's the fancy word for a first person volative? Shows what your will or desire is. It's cohortative. Let me do such and such. Let me sing unto the Lord a new song. Okay, that's first person, cohortative. Second person is when you give someone a command, an imperative. Yo, listen up, do something. And then here we see the third person, jussive. Let so-and-so do such and such. As a repeat from last time we talked about this, not only will you notice that a jussive is a jussive because of the way it's missing a mater letter, but also if it has either the word al or the word na next to it. So al means something like don't, right? It's a negative particle. So if I'm speaking to somebody and I say, don't do it, turns out that's not an imperative. Negative imperatives, for one reason or another, are actually jussives. That's right. Second person negative commands are jussives. They appear like jussives do. They don't appear like the usual imperative form. Let me go ahead and kind of spell this out a little bit. Let's take an average verb like shamar. If I want to say, I will guard, what would that word be?
Ishmar.
Eshmor. Yeah, like that. Now, what if I want to turn it into that fancy cohortative thing that I just mentioned earlier?
Nashmar.
Okay, it's going to have a hey at the end, like this. And unless it's in pausal form, this holam will drop down to a shva. Eshmara. Okay, so it could be either one. I'll leave it in pausal form because it shows the original vowel. This is cohortative. Let me guard. What's that?
You just did it. You just answered my question. Yeah, okay.
Now, what about if I want to say let us guard? Well, then we take out the aleph and put in a nun. Nishmora or nishmara. Let us guard. So those are both first person. I'll leave the aleph back where it was and just put a first right there next to cohortative. The imperatives are second person, and they actually take the regular yiktol verb and lop off the tav. Tav, what tav? Well, second person always has a tav at the front, right? Tishmor, you shall guard. Tishmeri, you a woman shall guard. Tishmeru, you guys. Tishmona, you ladies. There's always a tav at the front. So the imperatives essentially take the tav off. So instead of tishmor, it becomes shmor. The masculine singular form, shmor. Hey, you guy, listen, shmor. I want you to guard something. If it's feminine, what would be the feminine form if I'm speaking to a woman?
Shmarna.
Okay, that's to a group of ladies. Shmona. Hey, you ladies, guard something. What if it's only one woman?
Shimra.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent. What would it be in pausal form? The reason I ask is because the pausal forms are usually closer to the original. So it's actually important to learn those first, even though they're less common. It would be shmoli. Shmoli. But the problem here is that if you put the stress on the end, this O, like we mentioned earlier, drops to a shva. Oh no, now we have two shvas at the beginning of the word, so we have to fix it with a chirik, shimri, just like you said.
So you always say that that a chirik is a shva.
I say it's related. Yeah, I say chirik and shvas are very more closely related than most people will care to admit, but I can demonstrate it from a linguistic perspective pretty easily. So I'm not sure what all the fuss is about. Okay, so those are imperatives that we could also put in here shimru or shmoru in the pausal form. But I'll put it back the way it was. Shmo. And then jussives, what would the jussive form of this verb be? The third person, let him do such and such. Let him guard. It's totally boring.
Shmar.
It's completely boring. There's nothing distinguishing this verb from a standard yiktol. Of course, if it had an al or a na next to it, we could know better, but otherwise there's no telling the difference. Bummer. There are so many verbs in the Bible that simply look the same in the jussive. If they happen to have a mater lectionis that goes missing, yay! Can you think of categories of verbs that have a mater lectionis in them? Like by definition, and therefore would look different in the jussive? We've already mentioned one of them. Lamed yods. If there's a yod in the third position of the root, then that means there's usually a hey, mater lectionis hey at the end of the verb. It goes missing. It looks different. It's a jussive. We can be sure. How about if it's a hollow verb, what we call, ein vav yods. That is, there's a second root letter vav or yod. Don't those usually show up as vowels, mater lectionis letter vowels in the yiktol? How do you say he will return?
Yachzor.
Very good. Give me a hollow root.
That's above my pay grade.
Really? Yashuv?
I haven't gotten that far in, well,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
the hollow root yet.
All
I
right.
don't understand them.
All right. So the point of the hollow root is that your first root letter is pretty standard. Your second root letter sometimes goes missing because it's a vav or a yod, or it turns into a vowel. And the third root letter, can be fairly standard here. So, what about shu? Besides shuv, we also have what I mentioned earlier: lean, shir, sim, moot, bo, uh, bosh. I mean, there are tons and tons and tons of them. Anyway, so yashuv means he will return. Oh, don't you guys know the word teshuvah, repentance? So it's from the same root. Teshuvah is that feminine noun that means a coming back or a returning or a repenting. So it's from this root right here. We've got a yiktol yod out in front. And then we've got 3 root letters. Well, kind of. The vav turned into a vowel. What would it look like in the jussive? Well, we know by definition, jussives don't have maters. So instead of having a vav there, it will have something else. It'll either have yashuv with a shuruk, or it could actually have something like yashov with a cholam up here, because O's and U vowels in Hebrew are very closely related. You could actually even have a penultimate stress, yashov. That's something we get to see in vayiktols, isn't it? Now I'm bringing the whole thing back full circle. Looky here. Vayomer means and he said. What if I took off the vav, the patach, and the dagesh? What if the word were yomer? What kind of a verb would that be? Huh?
It would be yikto. Yomer?
That's yomar.
Oh.
When does it turn into yomer?
Yomer. The participle. Oh,
Okay. It's actually the oe requires a tzere here, which is akin to an original I vowel, whereas segals are artificial. And so what's happening here is it lost stress, shifted to here, and this was originally 2 shvas. What we would be looking at here is a jussive. It's a jussive. Let him say. So if you happen to see the stress moving forward on a yiktol verb, even if it doesn't have any mater lectionis letters missing, you can still tell that it is in form jussive. Mind blown. No. Anyway. And let's see. Speaking of hollow roots, Aleph Vav Resh, that's a hollow root. Right? Has a Vav in the middle. Probably as a verb, it probably means something like, to be bright or whatever, but ol is the thing which is bright. It's light. And notice again that this jussive is identical to that vayiktol, except for the vayiktol prefix, of course, yehi, yehi. So that goes back to the discussion about how yomer is an apocopated form. I use the word apocopated because that's the correct term, but it means everything that we've just discussed. Missing mater lectionis letters, changes in vowels, change in stress, all of that means apocopated. So yehi is apocopated. Yomer is apocopated. So keep an eye out for those when looking for these volative jussives. All right, well, that was fun.
There's a song, Lu Yehi, Ana Lu Yehi. That's very famous in Israeli folk songs. Is that a prayer then? Is it
It sounds like
a
it. I'm not sure if
jussive to
it's
the Lord. I'm just
Mhm.
trying to.
Okay, so lu is a hypothetical word. Let's see. If it were, I guess, lu haiti ose mashu. If I were to do something. So lu yihi does sound like both conditional and jussive. So I'd like to see it in context. I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that side of
Okay,
things.
sorry.
Okay, any comments or questions before we move on? Who would like to read the next verse where God sees the light that it was good? Come on, don't be shy.
I don't mind.
Go ahead, Monica.
V'yirei Elohim et ha'or kitov v'yivdel Elohim ben ha'or v'ben ha'kosher.
Excellent. Vayar Elohim et haor kitov. Vayavdel Elohim ben haor uven hachoshech. All right, so we see a vayiktol here, don't we? Very strange looking vayiktol. What's the root? Ra'ah. Is that a lamed yod verb? Is the third root letter a missing yod that usually shows up as a hey? How about ra'ah or yir'eh? It usually has a hey at the end. He saw ra'ah. He will see yir'eh. Let's see, I believe it's like this. I can't tell. I can't remember. Yeah, I think it's like this. Whatever. Yir'eh, he will see. So why is there a mater here? Because there's a missing yod of the root. How do I know there's a missing yod of the root? Because in certain forms the yod shows up. Like if I saw something, it would be ra'iti. See, there she is, gracing us with her presence in certain forms. But in the 3MS form, she's not going to be there. So what we have here is a missing mater letter. There we go again, how vayiktols have apocryphated forms and jussives have apocryphated forms. How would you say, let him see?
Yir'eh.
I'm not sure that the hey would be there. I think it would just be yal. Yal. Now, I don't know that this shows up in the Bible anywhere, but hypothetically, that's what it would be. Let's use something a little bit more down to earth. Here we see another vayiktol, vayavdel. Is it missing a mater in here? What benyan is it with that patach? Hifil. If the yiktol letter has a patach, the first thing you should suspect is that it is a hifil. So this is from the root hivdil, which we might know from the word havdalah, the ceremony that happens at the end of Shabbat, to make a separation between the holy and the common or profane. Hivdil is to divide between things. Hivdil, he divided. Here it's in the vayiktol, vayavdel. What's it missing? The hifil yod. So if I didn't have a vayiktol sitting out front like that, how would you translate yavdel? Jussive.
Divided.
Well, it would be jussive. Let him divide. Okay. The standard form he will divide is yavdil, like this, with a weak dagesh there. But as soon as you lose this, which necessitates that this turns into a longer vowel, yavdel, this is a jussive form. It's or I should say it's an apocryphated form, which therefore means it's jussive. This up here was also apocryphated, but because of the vayiktal, both of those like to apocryphate. Vayavdel Elohim, and God divided, ben haor uven hachoshech. In Hebrew, in English, we say between this and that. But in Hebrew, we say between this and between that. You use the preposition multiple times. It's also the same word used whether it's between or among. In English, you have to separate the two. Am I differentiating two things or more than two things? That's between or among. But in Hebrew, it's all the same word. Between the light and the darkness. Comments, questions? All right. Next verse, who would like to read?
I will.
Okay, go ahead.
Vayikra Elohim laor yom ve'lachoshech kara laila vayehi erev vayehi boker yom echad.
Very good. I'm a new reader and I'm not very good at it. How could I divide this big long verse into shorter segments? Where would you put commas?
After day.
After yom?
Yeah, after yom. After night, Lila.
Mm-hmm. Is that it?
After Boker, maybe.
Let's see. Yes, I would agree. And it's because of that thing. So okay, if you understand the context of what you're reading, great. You can kind of automatically divide it up into shorter segments. But if you're struggling to pull all of it into one context and understand what you're reading, maybe it's a lot easier to break a big problem up into smaller problems and just focus on the little bits. How do I do that? Well, we know how to divide one verse from another, right? That's the easy part. How can we divide a verse in half?
Etnach.
The logical halfway point is this wishbone looking symbol here. So when you see that, you know there's going to be a pause after it. There are certain other symbols that you can pretty much guarantee will necessitate a pause. And this is probably the third most important one you need to know. The zakef katon. So put a comma after it. So most important will be end of verse. The second most important will be the etnach or etnachta. And then third most important will be zakef katon. And then there are 26 more of them that you could list out here, but learn them in an order that makes sense. Learn the most important ones first.
In the last word, echad, the little line, that's a siluk.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right. These two are intimately attached. They represent the same thing. Siluk is the little vertical line, and sof pasuk are the two dots, but they both show up the vast majority of time in the Bible. They show up at the end of the verse.
So they work together.
They work together. Very, very rarely you'll run into some examples where you'll see a siluk in the middle of a verse or no siluk at the end of the verse, but by and large, there will be one.
What is it called? The two dots at the end?
Sof pasuk. Sof means end, and pasuk. Sorry, I'm having trouble deciding whether I want to do square script or hand script. Sorry, pasuk. Sof pasuk is end of pesek. It's a broken piece. So it's basically a verse. It's a fragmented piece of something.
Okay, you said to Jesse, the tifcha, you called it, that it indicate in voker,
Mm-hmm.
that it indicated something, and I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those lesser, I don't want to say lesser used, but I guess lesser known cantillation marks. It's actually quite common. But a tipacha indicates something of a soft break. So it's just one of those, yeah, it's just one of those less important but still somewhat important cantillation marks.
Thank you.
By the way, it seems here that there might be an exception, but usually you can tell where to break up a verse simply by looking for the conjunctions. Vayiktol will usually be, well, I say usually, by definition, it's supposed to start a logical unit, a phrase, a sentence. So here it's starting one. Down here, maybe it's starting another one. And here, maybe there's another one starting there. Yeah, but that's a mercha. So might be an exception, but usually vayiktols are starting a fresh sentence. So as you're reading along, let your mind pause where you see there's a conjunction coming up, and you'll probably sound a lot more natural. Here's another vav right here. Vaikra Elohim la'or yom, pause. V'lachoshech, there's a tipacha right there, so there's a slight pause. And to the darkness, he called night, kara laila. So there might actually be a little pause right there. Vayhi erev, and there was evening. Vayhi boker, and there was morning. Yom echad, day one. This is not the word first. It's the cardinal number one. Day one. And then some people will turn that into an entire theological issue, but whatever, I digress. That's not my forte. And all right, who would like to read next?
I will if nobody else wants to.
Of course. Well, even if they want to, you're welcome to read.
Okay. Vayomer Elohim yehi rakia b'toch hamayim vahi vihi mavdil ben mayim lamayim.
Very good. I'm glad you caught that. Vayomer Elohim yehi rakia b'toch hamayim vihi mavdil ben mayim lamayim. All right, we've talked about that quite enough. And God said, Yehi, jussive, let there be, rakia. Does anybody know what the verb raka means? It means to hammer something out. Something solid that you're hammering out, like into a flat sheet, maybe, metalworking. Why do we get to see the word rakia referring to something in the midst of the waters that's dividing the waters? And here in a few verses, it's going to call it sky. And it tells us that the birds fly in the rakia hashamayim, the firmament of the heavens. In fact, the English translators invented a word. King Jimmy translators invented a word to be able to describe what a rakia is. And they use the word firm. Rightly so. So what is firm up in the heavens? Well, some people will say, well, there used to be a sheet of ice, a dome around the whole earth. Other people will say, well, it actually might be referring to the land, the continent that was splitting the waters of the original created earth, like a almost like a waterbed with water underneath it. And then assume you spill a drink on your waterbed, the drink will collect into puddles, won't it? So this is something called the hydroplate theory. And it explains not only Noah's flood later on, but it explains a whole lot of topographical phenomena, geologic phenomena on the earth post-flood. So it's really interesting to think about.
But the birds can't fly in it, could they?
Yeah, exactly. So that means something went awry. We already ran into the problem when we're talking about it's firm, it's something hammered out, and the birds can fly in it. Huh? So
Maybe-
there's something else going on here.
Maybe the bronze laver of 1 Kings 7.
Did the birds fly in it?
They certainly collect around it.
Well, it's different from outer space. What we have around the Earth, the atmosphere, is full of stuff. And the birds fly in that. We get the clouds in it, and
It's an interesting. I obviously could go on for hours about it, but this is Hebrew, so I'm gonna leave it at that. If anyone wants to read into it a little bit more, I've recommended it before. I'll say it again. Walt Brown's book In the Beginning, which is on his website for you to peruse for free, goes through the entire hydroplate theory, which is fascinating. Leave it at that. Plus, if you get the actual textbook, it is amazing with a whole bunch of color illustrations. And he does all his math in the back. He was a MIT colonel in the Air Force, MIT graduate, colonel in the Air Force, mechanical engineer. I mean, highly qualified man. But anyway, it's a great read. Who would like to read the next verse?
Will you put him in the chat? His name.
Sure. There it is. You should be able to find his website. Is it ICR, Institute of Creation Research, or something like that? I don't know. All right. Who's going to read next?
I will if no one else wants to.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Vayas Elohim et ha-rakia vayavdel ben hamayim asher mitachat larakia uven hamayim asher me'al larakia v'yehi ken. Oh, chen.
Vayhi chen. Vayas. There's a change in the stress. Instead of ya'aseh, it's vayas. Is that an apocryphated form? Yeah, there's a missing hey. Yeah, it's apocryphated. Vayas Elohim et harakia. Wait, where's the stress? Is it over here? Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Let me see if I can find another example in here. Oh, like this one. Is the resh stressed? Or is the mem stressed? There are certain, wow, this is actually a lot, 4 of them in one verse. Anyway, there are some cantillation marks that do not reside over or under the stress syllable. Get to know them. None of these help you to know where the stress of the word is. Remember that the primary focus of the Masoretic scribes is to get you to read or chant the text in a certain way. It's less important to them where you put the stress of the word, more important how you trill and sing and chant the text. So with these 3 cantillation marks, they're utterly useless in marking where the stress goes. How do I know that the stress cannot go on this syllable? Well, because the patach isn't even, I mean, it's only there because of a pronunciation or dialectic feature that we see in the Judean dialect. And because ayin was originally like that, they would prepare their voice by putting it into an shape before making that sound. Harakia. And then that ayin sound at the end. It's not even part of the word. It's not part of the structure or pattern of the, excuse me, it's not part of the pattern of the word. So it can't be stressed. Plus, and usually, well, okay. Yeah, usually the stress would fall here, like David. Mashiach. Okay, I'm trying to think of other examples. Not tzaddik, that's a different pattern. But the stress usually falls here anyway, and there's a silent shva or no shva at all at the end. Okay, harakia vayavdel ben hamayim asher mitachat larakia. Wait, what is a share?
That which who?
Tells us more information. It's a relative particle, right? It tells us more about mayim, asher mitachat larakia. The water that from under the firmament. Uven hamayim, there it is again, asher me'al larakia. So we've got water underneath and we've got water on top of this rakia. Do birds fly in water?
Yes,
Mm,
No, fish fly in water.
Swim.
Birds fly in air.
it's a matter of density. It's a matter of density. So they have this water. They have that military actually has equipment that actually makes water out of the air. So
Okay.
it's changing in density that we're breathing aspirated water, essentially, just a lighter density.
In fluid dynamics, technically air is a liquid. I get that. But mayim is H2O. Do birds fly in H2O? No, they don't. So it's still, this is part of an ongoing problem where we need to define what rakia is, but it may be very hard to, because maybe the rakia that the writer of Genesis had in mind no longer exists as it once did. And then that whole thing about where it switches over and says rakia shamayim, and all of a sudden the birds are flying in it. It's like, what happened? Vayhi chen, and it was so, or thus. All right, next reader. Tim, you want to read?
Sure.
Okay.
Vayikra Elohim larakia shamayim vahi erev vahi boker yom sheni.
And Tim, be honest with me. Are you reading a transliteration?
Both. I have three versions. I have two Bibles, and my Bible is like it's like the super fine print, so I'm wearing magnifiers.
Oh yeah.
So I can't, if I look at the screen, it's blurry.
Oh, is it? Bummer.
Yeah.
Um,
Did I make a mistake?
No. I just I
Oh.
wonder why. I was just wondering why you were reading down instead of reading on the screen. I thought it was a large font, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm wearing
Vaikra,
magnifying
uh-huh,
lenses, and you're all blurry to me.
exactly. Vaikra Elohim larakia shamayim. Okay, so here's where we get to see the rakia being called that. And we think we know what shamayim is. It's the sky, the heavens, right? Vayhi erev, vayhi voker, yom sheni. Wait, God didn't say everything was good. Did he? This is the one day where God doesn't call everything good. I wonder why. All right, next verse.
Hey, by the way, this is my print. It's like
That's
it's like
tiny.
less, it's like a centimeter.
Man, if I were you, I'd invest in a big font Bible.
I know.
Oh, all right. Who would like to read this?
I'll go.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Vayomer Elohim ikavu
Very good. Yikavu.
hamayim
I hoped you would get that right.
hamayim mitachat hashamayim el makom echad ותראה היבשה ויהי כן.
Very good. Vayomer Elohim yekavu hamayim mitachat hashamayim. El makom echad, v'tera'eh hayabasha, vayhi chen. Why did I say I hoped you would get that? What's the word for hope in Hebrew?
מקווה.
Ikva.
Is it the same root as yikavu?
To be gathered together is yikavetz.
What is it?
Yikavetz.
Kavatz?
Kavatz is kavat? I think so. I think I learned it today.
Like to gather something together, likbotz.
Yikbotz. Yikavu.
But that's with a bet, and this is with a vav.
Yeah.
So even though they sound the same today, they're completely different letters. So it's an interesting connection. I appreciate that. And it is spelled with a kuf, but alas, the second two letters are no bueno. So what this is what here's another word. Does anybody know what a mikveh is?
Like a mikvah?
Yeah,
Mhm.
mikveh. We call it a mikvah, but it's actually mikveh. Mikveh. It is a noun related to the root of waters gathering together.
Okay.
What we see up here is yikavu. It's a verb. What binyan is it? There's your triangle to tell you what binyan is. Tirik, dagesh, kamatz. Let the donkey remind you it's of nifal.
Nifal.
So this is a nifal yiktol. There's a yod at the front, u at the end. And the root letters that we can see are 1, kuf, 2, vav, 3, bye-bye, no yod. So it's interesting to see how the word tikva, which we usually translate as hope, is related to a root that means something like where the waters are gathered together. Now you could, if you can't turn that into a sermon, you have no preach in you. But the point is, it's like the sum or the collection of all of your expectations. That is your tikva. That is your hope. You could also throw something in there about how water and life and something like that. I'm sure you could really make something grandiose. But the point is, it's the same root as tikva, hope. Yikavu, let them be gathered together. Hamayim, the waters. Well, remember waters, it's treated like a plural. Mitachat hashamayim, under the heavens. El makom echad. Really? One place? We've heard of Pangea, where all the land is, connected together. Well, this is talking about there's one place where the water collected. Huh, interesting. V'tera'eh. Ooh, what kind of a word is this? V'tera'eh. Here, the triangle's a little harder to see, isn't it?
Okay.
This is a donkey with an accent. An English donkey.
It's a yiktol.
It is a yiktol.
And the vet is a conjunction. It's not.
Very good. Yeah,
And it's feminine.
it is. Yeah, it's feminine, 3fs. It is a yiktol with that tav. So that tav tells us it's 3fs. The ve is just a conjunction. It's a nifal. It's a nifal. Instead of having a chirik, dagesh, kamatz, like we saw earlier, we got a resh that will not take said dagesh. So it rejects it, politely refuses, which causes the preceding vowel to lengthen, and you get v'tera'eh. Let her be seen. That sounds a little clunky, so the translator says, let it appear. Let it be seen. What? Hayabasha. What is yavesh?
Dry.
Yeah. dry, the water. Yavesh is to be dry. Yabasha is a noun that is dry. It is dry land. In modern Hebrew, it's a continent. Vayhi chen, and it was thus or so.
I have a comment.
Sure.
When you're talking about Yikavu and Tikva, again, a song that we used to sing, Kaveh El Adonai. It's not Kaveh Et Adonai, it's Kaveh
No.
El Adonai.
Mhm.
It's almost like Tikva means a gathering together of ourselves in,
Mhm.
you know.
Kaveh, that would be an imperative.
Mhm.
So we're
They-
singing to, I would actually prefer that it were something like kavu, but it's okay. If it's kavu, it's like, hey, everybody, let's gather or be gathered. No, I guess it would be, it wouldn't be passive, would it?
I think it's something
Gathered.
to do with
Ka-
when
ka-
you really hope, you have to
Yeah.
get rid of a lot of stuff and you have to gather yourself, kind of all
Ah,
your strength and your focus, and not be double-minded, and just
there we
to
go.
hope in the
Okay, there
Lord.
you go. So it's lekavot. It's a PL. It's a
Mhm.
PL verb, kaveh, hope in the Lord. Kaveh ladonai. Put your hope in the
El
Lord.
Adonai, El
El,
Adonai.
towards Adonai. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is
Just a
awesome.
thought.
Thank you. Jesse, would you like to read?
Sure. Vayikra Elohim layabasha Eretz Ulmikveh Hamaim Kara Yamim Vayare Elohim Kitov.
ויקרא אלוהים ליבשה ארץ, ולמקווה המים קרא ימים. וירא אלוהים כי טוב. Okay, so I guess it is in here, כי טוב. ליבשה ארץ ולמקווה. Was it in the previous day then? Where the tov didn't show up? Did I miss it? Maybe I did. There's one day where the word tov doesn't show up, and there's one day where the word tov shows up twice. Anybody know which one is which? Come on, where is it?
I knew that once and I forgot.
Ages ago.
Yep. Eon.
Let's see. Darkness. There's God says darkness he called night. There was evening, there was morning. He saw the light was good on day one.
What day was it?
Firmament.
The
Yeah,
second
so the second day there's no tov.
But Tuesday? Is that where
Tuesday,
it's very good?
right? No. Tuesday shows up shows the word good twice. Once in verse 10 and once in verse 12. And because the word tov shows, or because the Bible, because Genesis says it was good, or because God said on the third day it was good twice, that's often why traditionally couples will wait to get married on a Tuesday, because it's a very good day to get married. I say it's a good day. We don't see very good until the end of the creation, where God sees all that he had made. Behold, it was tov me'od, very good or exceedingly good or mightily good. So if that's the case, why don't people get married on? Never mind.
So it wasn't good on Monday, but there's a double blessing on Tuesday. Is that what you're saying?
Make of it what you want. The Bible says that God did not say it was good on Monday,
Okay.
and said that it was good twice on Tuesday. So we can derive from that that Mondays are terrible and we should just strike them from our calendars. It's biblical.
Yes. The
Oh
song.
boy.
Oh, mercy. All right. Who would like to read?
I will
Can I
read.
read?
Sorry, was that Paulina?
Yep.
All right, go
ויאמר
ahead.
אלוהים חדשי הארץ דשא אשב Masria, Zera, S, Firi, Oshe, Fari, Leminu, Eshe, Zeo, Bo, Al, Haaretz, Vayehi, Ken.
Very good. Be sure to mind the dagesh dots and also the sin shin. All right, let me read through one time. Everyone can follow along. Vayomer Elohim tadshe haaretz deshe esev mazria zera etz pri ose pri lemiנו, אשר זרעו בו על הארץ, ויהי כן. All right, so this is the creation of vegetation. And what do they translate as deshe? It's right there.
Grass.
Grass.
Exactly. What's the root of tadshe?
Deshe.
So let bring forth isn't actually a very good translation, is it? What binyan is tadshe? There's a patach.
Let's see.
What is the patach? What's the patach
Hefil?
under the yikto? Yes, yes. If there's a patach, you should suspect a hefil. And look, there's a tzere right here instead of a chirik yod. We learned about this. It's jussive. Instead of she will vegetate or whatever the verb is, produce vegetation. It's let her produce vegetation. Let her, the earth, deshe. So let her vegetate vegetation. I don't even think that's right. Esev is another synonym for plants. Mazria zera. Ooh, here's another example where we get multiple words with the same root. We know what zera is, seed. So what is mazria? There's a
Taking
patach.
forth seed.
We feel participle. So this is causing seed,
To come forth.
seed, or yielding seed is how they put it. Etz pri ose pri lemino. Trees that fruit, producing fruit according to their kind. In Hebrew, min has become a bad word, like rated R or X or whatever you want to call it. But originally it means kind, a kind of plant or a kind of animal. Later on, it had to do with kinds of gender, doing things. Anyway, lemino, according to its kind. This is not species. Species was invented much, much later. You get a lot of skeptics looking at this word right here and said, so many species, went onto the ark. We'll be reading the story of Noah next time. They look at this word. There's no way you could fit all millions of species on the ark. Well, yeah, the Bible doesn't say that. According to kinds, which is roughly according to the family in the what is it, the text, it's not taxonomy, is that what you call it? Organizing all of the animals and plants into categories, is that right? Taxonomy, maybe. Anyway, let me know, according to their family or kind. Asher zar'ovo, which his seed is in him. So the fruit has the seed within it. Hey, if there's a seed in it, it's a fruit. Is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable? Well, science finally caught up and said, "Oh, it's actually a fruit." Well, the Bible said it all along. Is the seed in it? Then it's a fruit. Is a cucumber a fruit or a vegetable? According to this, it's a fruit. So is a squash and a pumpkin. it's going to be the parts of the
actually
plant.
true.
So it's the parts of the plant that are the vegetables, if it's the stalk, the leaf, the roots, stuff like that. Al ha'aretz, over the earth, vayhi chen, and it was so. Eileen, would you like to read?
Sure.
All right, all yours.
Okay. Let's see. Va'ot se a
Vatotse.
se va'ot se ha eretz
Ha'aretz.
eretz haaretz deshe el shiva
Esev.
ese lemsin no
Here.
min sar
Mazria.
ria
Mhm.
Masria es ri
Zera.
zera
Mhm.
li min nahau
Leminehu.
u va is
Yeah. Ve'etz.
ve'etz ve'shinha
Ose.
ose Pierre
Pri.
pri asher ser aru
Zar'o.
saro bin no
Vo.
bo le min hau
Leminehu.
ahu ba yira
Vayar.
yara vayar
Elohim.
Elohim ki tov.
Kitov. Tov me'od. He saw that it was good. So this day we get to see Tov. Vatotse haaretz deshe esev mazria zera leminehu. So this is very similar to what we just read in the previous verse. Ve'etz ose pri asher zar'o vo leminehu. Vayar Elohim ki tov. And earlier we read this word, but instead of leminehu, what was it? Let me know. What's more original? Let me know, or could you let me know what's more original? Is it let me know or let me know? The ehu is more original. And the pronoun who is where we get the ehu from. And then when Hebrew got lazy and stopped pronouncing their heys like they're doing in modern pronunciation, we get basically a vav at the end, and we can't call it an oo because we already have a verb suffix for oo. So it becomes o. Let me know. So ehu is original, and that turns into o. I have a difficult question, and I hope someone will know the answer. Is this a weak or strong dagesh in the pay?
That's so funny you're asking that question because I didn't know whether I should ask. Because sometimes I hear you pronounce it pri and sometimes peri. It's sort of a little bit. So I'm just wondering, it's a Bakat Kafat letter, and it's the first, it's I think it's a weak dagesh because you're supposed to say peri. Peri.
Okay, let me.
But-
It sounds like there are actually two things happening right now, so I want to keep them separate. The part of your question has to do with whether the schwa is pronounced.
Vocal or sound, yeah.
Ah. Well, let's put it this way: if there is ever a dagesh on the letter, then the schwa will be pronounced. Whether it's a weak or strong dagesh does not matter. Like in, let me think. Do we have an example here in this verse? No. Let me check the previous one. Not here. Not there. Oy vey, we're running out of options.
Fruit.
Okay, let me get back to the point. If we have a word that starts with oh, duh, the first verse right here, is this audible or is it silent?
Audible.
Audible. Even though it's got a weak dagesh in it? See, the point is that weak and strong dagesh do not make a difference about whether the schwa is pronounced or silent.
Isn't
It's
that because it's at the beginning of the word?
very
That
good.
it's
Because
vocal?
so here's the thing. Two things are happening because it's the beginning of the word. The schwa is pronounced because it's at the beginning of a syllable and therefore the beginning of a word. And the weak dagesh is there because it's the beginning of a syllable, beginning of a word. So both of these are here because it's the beginning of the word. It's not that it's necessarily related whether a strong or weak dagesh necessitates an audible or silent schwa.
Okay.
Now back to the question then. Now that I skipped past it, was it this one? There it is.
Yeah.
Found it. Okay, so the question on the table is strong or weak dagesh. How do we define whether a dagesh is weak or strong?
If it comes after a vowel?
If it comes after a vowel. So does it come after a vowel?
Yes, it does. Oh, say
So-
please, it's a construct.
Okay, so we got to okay, so there are some
Mm.
part of the frustration here is that part of the too many thoughts at once. You are absolutely correct that a strong dagesh comes after a vowel. The other side of that coin is that weak dagesh can only show up in Begad Kefat letters. Well, that doesn't help us here, does it? Because it is a Begad Kefat letter, but there seems to be a vowel before it. Up here, is that a weak or strong dagesh? Well, it's Dalit, so it can take a weak dagesh, and there's a consonant before it, so it must be weak, right? What about this one? Is that weak or strong?
I
Strong
believe
because it's following the
strong.
Yeah. So even though it's a Begad Kefat, it can take a strong dagesh, and look, there's a vowel before it. It is. All right. So what does a strong dagesh hint at for us? What does a strong dagesh basically tell us in general?
It doubles the letters.
So what went missing for this to get a strong dagesh? Are there two pays at the beginning of the word pri?
And
No,
two
not at
pays.
all. No. Wait, what's the root of this word?
Asa.
No. What's the root? What are the root letters? The word is, ose, it's obviously a participle. Asa would be the lexical form. But what are the three root letters of this word?
Yod.
Yod.
Ayin would be the first one. Sin would be the second one.
Saying-
Yod.
Oh, yod.
Yod would be the third. This is a lamed yod. This is a final yod root, and the yod usually goes missing, and instead of it, there's a vowel. And somebody came along later on and stuck a hey on there to represent that vowel long after the yod went missing. Where did the yod go? Right there, my friends.
Oh,
There's a strong dagesh because there's a missing yod. It's just that the hey got in the way, that somebody else added later on because they're like, oh, well, now it's just a vowel there. Oy vey. Of course there's a vowel there because you're not pronouncing the yod anymore because it got assimilated into the pay. Oy. So it's because of the missing yod there. There, you could also make an argument that the strong dagesh of the vayiktol is because of a missing yod as well. If the original form of vayiktol was simply the verb haya, which was originally hey vav yod, it was or he was, and then the hey being a soft letter and lazy Israelis turns into vav patach yod, and the yod appears as dagesh. Vav patach dagesh vayiktol, and it was that so and so did such and such. That's the narrative past. Hebrew added this to the front to differentiate it between other prefix conjugations that were future tense. Did you know there were two prefix conjugations? There was one that was prefix future tense, and there was one that was prefix preterite. What? Yeah. In Akkadian, prefix conjugations could be future or past, and the only difference is a vowel at the end of the word that Hebrew lost a long time ago. So the Hebrew needed something to differentiate between yiktol prefix words that are past tense and yiktol prefix words that are incompleted or future tense. And vayiktol, which was originally the verb haya, is how they did it. But eventually we forgot that vayiktol came from haya. We thought add a vav changed the tense, and then we applied it to vekatal, and that's how vekatal was born. It's kind of an accident, but we still love him.
Jared, does the makaf, does that makaf on ose play any role in that
Sure.
hey?
Oh, absolutely. And because of the makef right here, it's treating these two words as a single, grammatically as a single word, or I guess I should say syntactically, or do I say poetically, like the meter of the verse, they count as one word. It's like a hyphenated word. Absolutely. This would too.
So it's a construct word?
Well, Osei is a, oh, you smart woman. I would actually argue that it is not a construct. I would argue that it's not a construct because it's a participle, which is an adjective and could be in a construct chain. It could be, but it is a verbal. It is an adjectival verb, which means it can take an object. So I would argue that this is your subject. This is your verbal adjective describing something as doing an action, and this is your object. So rather than having a construct relationship, this of that, I see it simply as an object. The direct, it's not a definite direct object, but it's a direct object. What is the tree making or yielding or doing? Pri, fruit.
Fruit.
Yeah. So if the tree were making the fruit, then it would be etz osei et hapri. And then we would know beyond all shadow of a doubt that it's not a construct. It's just an object. So I would argue that this is an object here, even though I understand that some curricula will say, "Oh, look, it's a construct chain," like like a ro'etzon. Is this a construct chain? Ro'etzon, a pasturer or a shepherd of flock.
Yeah.
Is it a construct? No. I would argue that it's not. I would argue that ro'e is a participle. What is the ro'e doing? Or what is the action, the verb that he's doing to?
Shepherd.
Object. Son. If I am a lover of waffles, I could say lover of waffles, but I am loving waffles is not a construct chain, is it?
No.
Describe Jared as loving waffles. Well, sorry, that's not a construct chain. It's a adjectival verb with an object. But, in the end, what's the big deal? we're just nitpicking at this point. We're we say not picking hairs. What is it? Splitting hairs. Picking hair. Ooh. Kitov. All right, we only have 1 minute left. Vayhi erev, vayhi voker, yom shlishi. It was evening and it was morning, the third day. All right, does anyone have any comments or questions before we close out this evening? Too bad we didn't get down into the mud where we're talking about the Nephilim and the sons of God, and boy, we really could have gotten ourselves in trouble, but we didn't make it. Thank you all so much for coming. If you want to help support Hungry for Hebrew, you can either take a course or you can do it this way. Thank you all so much. Look forward to seeing you probably in 2 weeks, because I'm going to be taking a break for Hanukkah. So happy holidays or whatever.
Hag Sameach.
Exactly.
Sameach.
Hag Sameach
Hag
lechulam.
Sameach.
Shalom v'leitраot.
Thank you,
להתראות,
Derek.
שלום. תודה.
Bye.